If you are interested in having a career with the National Park Service, you are in the right place. We have two experts here to help us navigate this process that can sometimes be complicated and a little complex, but definitely worth it to have a great career. We are going to share tips, and I'm going to introduce Shannon Buckmaster. She is the Administrative Specialist with the Blue Ridge Parkway, which is a National Park Service unit. And Dr. Joy James, she is the Recreation Management Professor at Appalachian State University. They both have great experiences working for the Park Service. And so I am going to hand it over to Shannon and Joy.
Thank you so much. And so I'm going to take the screen and share with you all now. All right. So hopefully you are able to see that. Are we good to go, Joy?
Good to go.
All right. Okay, so thank you so much, Rita, for having us here today. And I am so excited to be here, and so is Joy. We are excited to share with you a little bit more about the Park Service, how to get a job. Like Rita said, I'm currently the Administrative Specialist with the Blue Ridge Parkway. And today we're going to spend about a half hour with you discussing employment. But first, we wanted to tell you how we landed jobs with the National Park Service in the first place. So my first job happened when I was 19 years old. I was going to college in St. Augustine, Florida, and a friend told me that her job needed a student employee. So I walked up to this building, submitted a resume, and I started a few weeks later. And I worked at the Castillo de San Marcos, the oldest masonry fort in the continental United States, for 2 years until I graduated. From there, I worked seasonally, collecting fees for Grand Teton National Park, interpretation at the Martin Luther King Historic Site in Atlanta, at the Guilford Courthouse National Military Park in North Carolina, before landing a permanent job finally in 2011 when I was enrolled as a grad student. Since 2011, I've worked at more than 5 national parks. I worked my way up and became a human resources specialist, reviewing resumes and approving thousands of hires from dozens of parks, from Glacier, Grand Teton, Yellowstone, and making sure that announcements go out on USAJOBS, the federal website for jobs, and making sure those hires are legal. For 3 years, though, I started to be remote in the pandemic, and I really wanted to get back to a park because I missed being around my fellow National Park Service employees, and Blue Ridge had this job opportunity. So I started here in November, and I'm just so happy to be back in my community. This is my home since college, the National Park Service. So I'm so glad to be back here and sharing this information with you all. So Joy, go ahead and tell us a little bit why you're here.
Thank you. So, my journey with the Park Service started probably about 25 years ago. I had aspired to be a park ranger, particularly in interpretation, and didn't understand seasonal work until about maybe 10 years after I graduated college. And I had a free summer, so I was able to be a park ranger at Home Week National Monument. And that job, I did a little bit of everything. I was cleaning toilets, walking the trails, doing interpretive programs, and just learning an incredible amount. And then decided to go into academia. But my heart was always wanting to be back with the parks or doing research with parks to help them be able to help us be stewards of the environment. And about 2 years ago, I had the opportunity to do a sabbatical for the National Park Service at Chaco Culture National Historic Park in New Mexico, and was an interpretive ranger again, and just fell in love with working with the visitors and doing programs, and again, kind of connecting with people to our cultural, natural, and historical resources.
All right, so as you can see from both Joy and my story, it's a bit of a winding road getting a federal job. It's not straightforward. We're in different places. I was a college graduate. She was already in her career. But hopefully, if you're interested in the Park Service, you can become an employee no matter where you are at in your life. And all U.S. citizens are eligible. But the system can be a little tricky. So today we want to share these tips on federal hiring and how to get a job here within the Blue Ridge or wherever you've dreamed about in the Park Service. Okay, so some of you might be wondering why you should work for the Park Service in the first place. Obviously, the number one is the uniform. It's iconic, the flat hat. We look amazing. But obviously, there's also beauty in the parks. But there's also more practical reasons. So if you are a seasonal employee, so those folks who work 6 months or less in a year, they receive health benefits, dental, vision, they get annual leave, sick leave. The time of their appointment can count toward student public loan forgiveness. There's training that is provided in many jobs. If you get a permanent job, so those people who work more than 6 months of a year, those people receive a retirement pension, matching 5% in your 401k, 12 weeks of paid parental leave. There's job stability when you're a federal employee. There's growth opportunities, flexible work schedules, there's life insurance, flexible spending accounts, childcare subsidies, all these wonderful benefits being a federal employee. And then we also have competitive pay. At entry level, you make about $39,000 a year, and by mid-level, you're making about $59,000 a year. And I was making that probably 4 years into my permanent status, so mid-level is attainable potentially. But the main thing, of course, though, is finding a sense of purpose and valuing these places and continuing the legacy of those before us. So wearing the iconic uniform makes you part of something bigger than yourself. And that's why Joy came to the Park Service, why I am here at the Park Service, and what we love about it. All right, so Joy, so why did you become a Park Service employee in the first place? What was your main drive?
My main drive was really trying to connect people to nature and be good and create stewards of our natural resources beyond the park borders.
Okay, so you are our stereotypical wonderful employee. That is exactly what we want. And no matter your level of education or experience, the Blue Ridge Parkway or the NPS, they have a job for you, and it just depends on what you want to do with your life. So Joy took a sabbatical and was able to work for the summer. That's why we have lots of seasonal positions. Other people want maybe a more permanent lifestyle. It just depends. So I'm going to go over a few of the jobs that you see on the screen right now. So for instance, right here, this person carrying some wood across a river, it seems like, a riverbed. I've had a friend who works remotely in Alaska. He sees more grizzly bears than people. He loves it. So if you do not want to see people, we have a job for you. If you want to be on the front lines protecting health and safety of visitors and our wildlife, then you can be a law enforcement ranger or potentially work dispatch. Down here in the corner is my coworker who's working the dispatching center. If you want to be what I call an unseen support to everybody who visits a national park, you can work in our maintenance branch. So this is a friend of mine who is an engineer who ensures that we have the roads and other facilities, water, wastewater, treatment plants that you all need when you visit. Because if you visited a national park, you certainly have used one of these that this maintenance worker is working on. These are incredibly these positions are incredibly helpful, are needed across the Park Service. And you can also be somebody who works the front lines if you love education and interpreting history, whatever it might be. Sorry about that. There are folks on the front lines every day interpreting, and these are both in large parks like Grand Canyon, but also in smaller parks that we may not think about. This is the Frederick Douglass House in DC. And so they're all over the country. It just depends on what your lifestyle wants to be or what you want your lifestyle to be. But what is essential for all these positions is a passion for public service, which is what Joy has, which is what I have, which is what all these people have. All right. Okay, so for the jobs that we're talking to you about, how can you actually apply for them? The whole point of this webinar. So there are jobs listed on USAJOBS.gov. And so far, since I have been here, and that was only since November 2023, the Blue Ridge has announced about 32 permanent jobs and 90 seasonals. So those are the folks who only work 6 months or less in a year. About 20 of our positions for the seasonals remained unfilled for the summer, and about 11 of our permanent positions are still not filled or they're pending recruitment again. So this is why we're doing the presentation. There are positions at the Blue Ridge Parkway and beyond, and we need stewards for our workforce and we need new ones, but there are barriers to the process. And so we want to talk to you a little bit more about USA Jobs and how to decode it a little bit. Because both Joy and I, we got our start in the National Park Service. Personally, it's because I kind of knew somebody. And that's what we wanted to be for all of you today. Insiders that'll help you get your foot in the door. And now you can know somebody for the winding road that is federal employment. So the best way to start this is to just go into USA Jobs. So Joy, are you ready to look for positions for yourself for this summer?
Yes, yes, I am.
All right. Okay, so hopefully right now you can see this is USA Jobs. So like I said, every federal job is going to be announced on this website. And so USA Jobs is not just for the National Park Service, it's for all federal agencies. Now, jobs for the Blue Ridge Parkway, we announce our seasonal positions. So usually seasonal jobs, they might start in May, but we actually announce them starting in September of the year before. So if you're looking at applying here and being here next summer, you're going to want to start getting on this website now and getting ready for when our announcements are going to go open. Permanent jobs are open all the time. But we're on USA Jobs, and Joy, I know you have an account because you have told me how much you love the website, right? It's
Yes.
fun. Okay, so we're on here, and this is the main homepage. And I want to show you a little bit about what you can do in your actual account. So right here, you can see any job that I've applied to recently. You can see I tried to apply to be a locomotive engineer just to kind of see how the site was going these days. They didn't refer me. It was very weird. It was very rude. And then you can see here, there are jobs here that I've saved that I might want to go back and take a look at. If you're taking a look at the an opening and you're not quite sure if you want to apply or don't have time, you can save it for later. And then these are saved searches. So in a little bit, Joy and I are going to look at the search function. And when you find a search area that you're interested in, I want to have jobs, you know, I love Yosemite. I only want to work at Yosemite. If you want to save that search and be notified whenever there's a vacancy, you can save it and then come in here and you can say when you want to be notified. And I would recommend daily if you're really interested in a job, because some of our jobs have applicant limits and they may close after a day or two. So have a daily notification in your email so you don't miss a job. And that's what I would recommend here.
Shannon.
Yes.
Oh, one other thing, just again, to clarify, when I go to USA Jobs, I need to fill it out and create the account so that I can get all these filters to work for me.
Yes.
And then just to clarify on that daily count, does that mean once the applications have hit that number, I can no longer apply? Like how does that work?
Yeah, so we do get a ton of applicants. Like I said, we have a lot of vacancies, but also a lot of our jobs get so many applicants. So we may only have one vacancy. When we announce it, we may say there's a 100-person applicant limit. So say it's open today, it's going to have a 100 applicant limit. If it hits that 100 applicant limit at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, it will stay open till midnight Eastern Standard. So you'll have the whole day to apply, but then it's going to be cut off, even if it says it's going to be open for 2 more weeks. And so when we go into announcement, I think we'll see there'll be like a little yellow bar that says, okay, there's an applicant limit. If you see that, you know you need to get applying, which is why it's critical to get notified daily if you're really interested. And then come in here on your profile, go to documents, and you can see here, you can save resumes. So if you're really looking for positions that are in education and interpretation, you can come in here and have a resume ready to go. I have an HR resume and an administrative resume. So I can hit the ground running when I see a job I want. You can also upload other documentation. So I have my transcripts in here. I'm not a veteran, but if you're a veteran, upload your VA documentation, your DD-214, if you were ever federal employment, other eligibilities, all these documents, you see you can upload at least 10 documents and have them in here ready to go. So be prepared. When a job becomes available, get notified immediately, apply immediately is my advice. Okay.
One other note just to intervene too is the federal government has a specific need for a type of resume called the federal resume, which we'll either send you or they might be putting in the chat for you directions on how to do a federal resume. And I know Shannon will tell us that, but I just want to get that clear. You can put your resume up there, but if it's not federal, it may not help you get the job.
Yeah, when you establish your USA Jobs account, it's going to take you through building a federal resume on USA Jobs. And yeah, our resumes are odd. So my current resume is 7 pages long, which is pretty normal. I've seen resumes that are 50 pages long with indexes, and that's a bit overkill. But the reason why we have it so long, and it's not that 1 or 2 page resume that you'll see in the private sector, is because you're applying. And for instance, I used to be a specialist looking at your resume. I'm never going to talk to you. In fact, I can't, right? I can't give you an unfair advantage and say, could you provide me clarification? You said you were Professor Joy. So did you actually develop the curriculum or did you need to spell it out for me? I don't know what you did. So you said you built a house. Great. does that mean that you poured the foundation? Were you in charge of the people, or did you actually perform the work? And so that seems kind of nuanced and too much information, but we need that information because we're not going to be able to talk to you. So you want to make sure your details are spelled out in your resume, and that USA Jobs Resume Builder will help you do that. It also contains information like we want to know hours worked per week, so we know if it's full-time, part-time. So we'll go into that a little bit more too. So hopefully, like I said, come in here, create a resume or create a profile, get all your documents in order, build a resume, and then we can start looking at jobs. So first thing I'm going to do is just hit on search before I actually hit anything. So I just want to see. So Joy, you obviously only want to work for the Park Service. All the other agencies are meaningless. We want to stay in the Park Service, right?
Right.
Okay. So I'm going to come down here. You'll see all these filters, and honestly, there's just too many. This website isn't the most user-friendly. So we're going to come down here, and I'm going to choose the agency of the National Park Service. So I'm narrowing this down because, again, right now there's a ridiculous amount of jobs in here. I actually have no idea. So here we go. Something like 20,000 jobs in the federal government. So let's narrow it down to just National Park Service. Okay, so there's 200 positions available. So you are a professor, so you want jobs probably in the summer. Are you willing to travel a little bit, not just Blue Ridge Parkway, but maybe North Carolina and Virginia?
Yes,
Okay.
I'm happy to travel.
Okay, so we've only filtered National Park Service. Now we're going to take it and we're going to say, okay, she's interested in North Carolina. So that's added to our search feature. I'm going to add Virginia. Okay, so now Park Service within our search area, North Carolina and Virginia. Now we're seeing 10 jobs. So we're filtering it down a little bit more. Okay, and so this part I've already asked Joy, and she's comfortable with this. So I'm going to go to hiring paths. And this is, again, one of the most important things that trip people up constantly. All these jobs are available, but you may not be able to apply to them. Because when a manager goes to announce on USA Jobs, they have a consultation with HR about their area of consideration, we call it. So who's eligible to apply to this? It may only be Department of the Interior employees or federal employees or US citizens. So they make that decision and they announce. And so when you're looking at jobs, you don't want to spend your time on a job you're not actually eligible to apply for. So I'm going to go down here. So we're all, hopefully, I think on this call are probably US citizens. So I'm going to leave that one there. So Joy, are you now ever been a permanent federal employee in any federal agency?
No.
No. Okay, so I'm not clicking on these boxes. Are you a veteran of the armed services?
No, I'm
Are
not.
you a spouse?
No.
Of the armed services. Okay. Are you an individual with disability that is permanent and life affecting and could be documented by a doctor's note?
No.
No. All right. So any of these sound familiar? PLC, AmeriCorps, Peace Corps, anything like that recently?
No.
Okay. So if any of these, if you're listening to this and any of these are hitting something like, hey, wait, I might have that. I'm going to hopefully go back to there and it'll let me come back. Oh gosh, we'll see how this goes. If you go back to the actual start of USA Jobs, down here, you can learn more about the hiring paths. And if you want to know more about, oh, well, I'm a veteran, what's open to me? Oh, hey, I just graduated a year ago. Maybe there are paths open to you. And like I said, that's very important because that can actually extend what you can apply to. So right now, we've got 10 jobs. And if it's just open to US public, which is what Joy is, we've got 5 jobs. But I'm a permanent federal employee. And so if I am with the National Park Service, so I actually can apply to up to 10 of these. So anyway, you need to know your area of consideration, research it if you might be somebody who has a disability or a veteran. Okay, so now we've narrowed it down to what you can actually legally apply for. So we're going to see there are 5 positions. And I'm going to pick your career for you. I think a visitor services assistant here in Vienna, Virginia might be interesting because I think it's open to the federal, it's a contact position with the public. Sounds like it might be up your alley. I don't think you're a sign painter or a tractor operator. I don't think that's in your wheelhouse necessarily. Okay. All right. So the announcement itself, again, it seems like a lot of words, but you want to read all of it. And because especially if you want the job, you need to read it all. So make sure it's a fit for you. So have you ever heard of the Wolf Trap National Park for the Performing Arts, Joy?
Actually, I have not.
Well, it's pretty cool. It's actually where they show musical acts and what have you. It's near DC. It's really cool. I don't know a lot. People on the call may know a lot more than me, but so this person is seasonal. So again, it's not that permanent job, but that sounds like it's up your alley because you want to work seasonally. You have your full-time professor gig that you probably want to stick with. May through September. This, you'll see there is an applicant limit. So once 150 applications are received, they're shutting it down. So if you can't apply, you saw this at your lunch break, you can't apply right now, hit the saved button so that it can save in your profile. So after work, you can go back and apply before midnight Eastern Standard, because I'm sure there are other people not Eastern Standard on this call. So again, you're going to see here how much you'll get paid. This one's actually only part-time, 24 hours a week. Here are the duties. A little bit more, you're going to have to do a background investigation. Government housing isn't available. You might have to be on call. So read a little bit more, make sure it's actually relevant to you. And then here are the qualifications, which are really important. If you're not qualified for the position, then it might be not worth your time to apply to this. Now, I'm pretty sure you are eligible for this, Joy. So for this position, you need 6 months of progressively responsible clerical work or 1 year of education above the high school. I believe that fits you, right, Joy?
Yes.
Yeah. I think you're qualified. And that's at the GS3 level. You can see, and these GS levels, the lower they are, the lower the pay, and the less experience or education you may need. The higher you go up, the more education and or experience you need, but of course, the more pay. So that's what those GS levels mean. And then there's also wage grade, which are the blue collar workers, folks who are going to work more in trades. So that's what you'll see on here. But then you also qualify for GS4 level, so 1 year of progressively responsible clerical work, or 2 years above high school education. So the way, again, you're going to prove that to this HR specialist who's out in the world, you're going to need to show that on your resume, that you've documented all that you have had that clerical experience, and you need to submit your transcripts. I would recommend both, even if you're like, oh, I have it in the bag, I definitely have the experience. Upload your transcripts anyway, just in case you missed a word or something.
Shannon, do they have to be official transcripts, or can I give unofficial transcripts?
Unofficial is fine. I have seen people who like make their own in a Word document. Don't do that. It still needs to have your school on it. And so down here, I'll actually say must submit a legible copy from an accredited institution, etc. So make it a real copy. It can be off the website, but later on, you'll have to give official if you are qualified via your education. So again, okay, you're qualified. Good. Let's keep rolling. It's going to tell you a little bit more about information, working conditions, and then what you actually need to submit, which is your resume, which you should have, an assessment, which we'll link to in just a moment. This will talk about, if you're a veteran, which you are not, but if you're a veteran, make sure those documents are there. College transcripts, again, do it every single time. This is documentation if you are a displaced federal employee, which you are not, but folks who are would know. Okay, and then the other last thing I really want you to look at before you actually apply to a job is it's hidden, right? I just had to click on a button to expand this. Under preview, you can actually look at the questionnaire. This questionnaire is taken from the position description. Every federal employee has a position description that tells me exactly what I'm supposed to be doing. It's mostly accurate. And so this questionnaire is taken from that. And so the first few questions are about eligibilities and such, so not so important. These are those minimum qualification questions, which you need to say you're qualified and then back up. But now it's going to go into general information. Initiate resource-related conversations with recreational area visitors. So you should be honest, but not modest when you answer this questionnaire. So Joy, what would you say? Have you initiated resource-related conversations with a park or recreation area visitor? Are you an expert, or have you not had any education?
I teach it, so I believe I'm probably an expert.
Yeah, you're probably an expert.
Yeah. But I think this is an important piece here, because sometimes I tend to be I undervalue my experience, and so that's why I'm always kind of curious, like where do I make these decisions?
Yeah, and so it's kind of easy, right? If you have a doctor in something, everybody's gonna be like, okay, Joy's a shoo-in, she's an expert. But for those of us who maybe, like I was a park guide as a 19-year-old, and I gave programs, And honestly, after a couple of months of that, when a new employee came on board, I would say, okay, well, here's the information that you need if you want to shadow me on some of my presentations. That was me being an expert, which I know probably sounds a little silly to some other folks in different career fields. But when you're filling out these questionnaires, be honest but not modest. If you can teach somebody else, if I come up to you and say, hey, can you show me how this is done? You're an expert, but just make sure it's in your resume and you back it up. Not just that you're a professor in this area, but that, I teach, anyway, go into more detail in your resume. And so you can look at every single question and you can kind of know the answers to the test. My best applicant is going to have this all in their resume and make sure it's all documented within there. So again, so maybe you saved it, you looked at it and said, my resume really doesn't address that I talk to people about policy guidelines. So I need to go back there and maybe fluff up my resume a little bit more with factual information, of course. But so I may go up, update my resume, upload a new copy before I apply later that evening. So it's a good thing to do. So that tells you the answers to the test.
So Shannon, for wage grade positions, how do I answer these questions? It's the same idea.
It's a little different, yeah, but essentially no education or training. It goes up to, I am a, oh my gosh, where is it in my head? I am a, oh my God.
Journeyman?
Journeyman, yes, thank you. Sorry, I am a journeyman, which of course, again, in the trades and electrician and masonry work, that is a very loaded word and means something very vital. But again, in here, it's you need to document it on your resume. But again, if you can teach others that you're doing it, I would go on the side of I'm an expert. HR can lower your score. We can mark you as ineligible. So if they don't find you qualified, et cetera, they will knock you down. So, answer it truthfully, but honestly, but not modestly. That's my recommendation.
Thank you.
So your resume is up to date. You got all your documents. You're good to go. So now the only way you can apply is here. You may see things on Indeed or LinkedIn. Ignore them. They're just meant to throw you here. You can only apply through USA Jobs, and you can see it's .gov. That's what you always want to look for. Okay, so now we're going to apply to the job, and I'm not going to go all the way through with applying. You can see my resume is already there. Let's just see how it goes. And then I'll start attaching my documents. And then eventually it's going to bring me over and link me to the questionnaire when I fill out the entire questionnaire, which again, I've already looked at. I've already probably made sure my resume is good to go. I'm going to apply to it. And once I do, I'll get an automated response saying, hey, you applied to this position.
So one other thing that I want to share with y'all about my experience with the USA Jobs during COVID, I was applying to the work at the Parkway because I thought, why not? I could have the extra time. And somehow I got my resume up, I got my documents up, but I missed the questionnaire or those documents. And so when this happened, I was determined ineligible for my job and my application went into the cloud somehow. And I was able to, get it corrected. However, I just want to be clear with y'all as an audience, you need to make sure you answer those questions because it was weird to try to figure out where to answer those questions.
Yeah. And I actually realized that I was announcing jobs for Blue Ridge in 2020. So that might have been me, Joy. So apologies for
But you responded really well. So no problem.
Okay. Well, anyway. Okay. So I just clicked on apply, even though I didn't, right? Nobody saw me. Everybody saw me. I didn't do it. But right here, it's already under here, applications. So it'll show me that, hey, you need to finish your application. So if you're not sure, if your computer gave you a weird message, come back in here. Now, the locomotive operator, which I did apply to because I figured why not, I did apply to it fully and I can come here and it's already closed and I can track my application and you can see it kind of goes to an external site for a second, hypothetically. And this is going to tell me, okay, so what I actually submitted. And then here I was emailed and told, hey, you applied, good job. And then on 7/29, they emailed me and said, you're not qualified at all. You need to move on with your life. And so again, so this is here for you to always look at and see how you're doing and ask questions. And then if you are or are not referred to a job, you can always come back here. And at the bottom of every announcement, there should be a point of contact. So if you applied like Joy and you weren't referred, and you're like, hey, what's going on here? I know I can apply for this. email Grant and say, hi, respectfully. People can get a smidge angry about this, but there are people on the other end. It's not computers, it's not AI looking at your resume, and say, hey, I'm really interested in this job. Can you tell me what's going on here? Honestly, usually it's applicants have made a little error and you learn, hopefully, or HR makes mistakes and they can review your information. So that's what I would suggest. So, all right, let's go back to our actual slideshow here. And that's pretty much USA Jobs. So this is the letter that Joy got saying she hadn't been referred on one of our positions, but that's kind of what they look like, right? Very standard, USA Staffing Office at OPM.gov. But those are the emails you're looking for, .gov emails, whether or not you were referred. And that's when you get this email, you go back and you track your application, say, hey, I'm interested in this job. And if you were referred, you say, hey, can I get the hiring official's information for this job? And you can actually reach out to them. Not everyone's going to respond to you. They have a busy workload, but oftentimes if you email and say, hey, can I get the hiring official's information? They will let you know at that point, because the manager actually has your resume in their hands and can look at you beforehand. The manager doesn't have anything until you get this email. So at that point, the manager can actually see your application.
So Shannon, one other thing, because this is something I learned, like I got this, I'm not referred. I didn't worry about this very much because I felt it just meant I was eligible, but it just hasn't, my stuff hadn't got to the hiring manager.
Yeah.
And so I was waiting. And then like literally a week later, I got a letter saying, you've been referred, but I wasn't referred on the GS7. So I was referred, but GS7 wasn't referred. So I think this other thing too, in terms of trying to interpret this, is understanding that you might get multiple emails. It was when I was termed ineligible that I was like, what?
Wait a second. Yeah. And then so like at Blue Ridge Parkway, we have 20 different locations or something. And then and you're going to get an email about, because we issue certificates. So that's the list to the manager for each of those locations. So that's potentially 20 different positions. Say it was different grade levels. Like we were just looking at a 3 and a 4. You're going to get all those emails. So that's why it's good probably to go back to what you applied for. Okay, what was this job? Especially say you're really interested, you applied to 50 jobs. That's what I did when I was looking for seasonal jobs. And go back to the announcement, email a person, hey, can you explain this to me exactly? What's going on here? But definitely follow up if you have questions. And we're going to give you our contact information. If you want me to try to decode something, I can try to. And also these can take weeks or months to get to you to actually be referred. Like I said, hundreds of people apply. It can take a while. So don't lose hope if it's been a while. And like I said, we announced our seasonal positions in September. The list may not be issued to the managers until December, when they're more likely to actually hire from the list. So please be patient. It's a bit of a long process. So the other thing I wanted to mention is that you need to expand your horizons. I don't know who's on this call, right? There's quite a few people, don't know your background, but just because you love Blue Ridge Parkway, because we're gorgeous, obviously, maybe you love Blue Ridge because of our biodiversity. But if you expand to maybe Great Smoky or Shenandoah, there's more opportunities, right? So maybe that's a great fit for you. Maybe you'll come back to Blue Ridge one day, but that can be your passion for a while. If you just got out of college and you're free to go anywhere, like I was in 2007, apply everywhere and anywhere. If you have that luxury of that privilege to be able to do that. And if we don't turn out to be the job for you, that's great. We look great on a resume. You get a great experience and some great money for the summer. But like me, it can turn into your career and you're still here 18 years later and you've drank the Kool-Aid. Or if you're somebody who wants a second career, you're out of retirement and you're bored and you're ready to get back into the workforce, apply, pack up your camper and just go. I know so many people who have second careers or professors or teachers, people who are free in the summer and are able to have that career with the Park Service still. But some people, of course, need to stay in Asheville or a specific location because you're taking care of kids or a loved one potentially, or you're unable to have that mobility. You can look outside the Park Service. You can look for Forest Service or BLM. There's remote work out there on USA Jobs. And you can come back to the Park Service maybe one day once you get that status. Like I said, and once you're no longer just a U.S. citizen, you have that permanent status, a lot more jobs open up to you. But if all of this sounds like it's outside your comfort zone or it's too complicated, There's volunteers, there's Student Conservation for America, there's the foundation who do great work supporting the park, and other foundations like that throughout the Park Service. So no matter where you end up working for Blue Ridge Parkway, National Park Service, or volunteering to pick up litter on the side of our highways, thank you for whatever contributions you make to the National Park Service and to future generations. This was my kid a few years ago, looking cute in my flat hat. Because we all have to do our part. And so thank you for coming to the presentation and getting a bit of an insider's view. And if you take away anything from this presentation, we want you to know, Joy and I want you to know that the parks are for everyone. You can work for this team, be a part of our team. We need stewards of the next generation, a diverse group of people who are going to be in charge of our parks. And it all starts with USA Jobs. You need to get in there, create an account, and set up everything like we were talking about. And you need to reach out if you have any questions. So our contact information is here. Please feel free to reach out. And now I'm gonna give it back over to Rita. And the foundation, I have not been monitoring the chat. My brain doesn't work that way. So please, Rita, let us know if there are any conversation or questions for the good of the group.
Yes, thank you both so much. And thank you very much for sharing your information. I know that is really important to some folks who have some very detailed questions that have come in. We're going to try and answer some of the broader questions for people, and we've had a lot of great questions come in. So the first question I have for you is, what is the age restriction for jobs?
Okay, I'll take that one. There is no age restriction for jobs, except for very specific things. So generally in the federal workforce, there might be prison guards, right? They have to be male, or sorry, for specific things. But for age restriction, there's nothing in the federal government except for law enforcement officers and those people who work in emergency services, and that's retirement based. So generally speaking, unless it's firefighter or law enforcement, and those people have to be under the age of 37 when they first begin their federal job. So other than that, I've worked with 92-year-olds, and the youngest is 18 that you're supposed to work for the Park Service. We do have YCC, Youth Conservation Corps, before then. You can work before 18, but you would need a high school diploma, most likely.
Great. Okay, we have another one here. How important is it to include a cover letter with each application?
Well, this is a debate. You ask different hiring managers. I don't know, Joy, do you hire people? Do you like cover letters or internships or what have you?
Well, yeah, we like cover letters, and my thinking is it's extra information for the hiring manager to determine, particularly the one who's at the park looking at it. So it may not be Shannon looking at it specifically, but those materials, I assume, get to the park manager.
Yeah, so the HR specialist who's reviewing it to make sure you're minimally qualified, yeah, we do not care in the slightest. The hiring manager, I've heard them split one way or the other. Just some of them, it's like, it's just another document to look at, but other ones find it very valuable because, again, 100 people have applied to this, and they also know that you've likely applied to 50 positions. So if you've taken the time to write a cover letter that shows that you're actually interested in this position on the Blue Ridge Parkway, and it's not just another park to you. But when you do write a cover letter, we'll often see, I'm so glad to work for the Forest Service, and just make sure it's actually for the job you're applying to. It says the National Park Service, and so make sure it's actually detail oriented. So it depends on what you want to do, but I would say it never hurts.
Great. And so let's see, we have another question here. How are retirees looked at in terms of consideration? This person is interested in seasonal work, and is this the best path to find that?
Okay, so we have tons of retirees. So I'm going to assume this person is not retired from the federal workforce. So if you're retired from the federal workforce, you're a reemployed annuitant, and it's stuff. There's a lot of information with that. But if you're a retiree from private sector or what have you, there is absolutely no problem with that. And that is you're a protected class. Age discrimination is not appropriate, except for those positions, like I said, that have law enforcement or fire, and that's related to their retirement coverage, actually. Absolutely, we have plenty of people who have second careers within the Park Service or the federal government, so please come on over. And again, seasonal work or permanent, there is no difference. Please come and work for us. We need you. That means you have a lot of experience, hopefully, and we want you.
Let's see, we have another one, and I think you touched on this, Shannon, but roughly how long does it take from submitting an application to being hired?
Well, we have, I believe it's called an 80-day hiring model right now. That's kind of silly. It depends. Joy, how long did it take from you to apply and actually start at Hoven Week? Was it right? How long did that
Well,
take?
it was took me about, like, I applied in October. I started getting emails and actually got interviews in February. And then I still had to go through the process of background check and some other things. So it was probably March or April before I knew that what park I was going to.
That sounds about right. But hopefully within the announcement, so if there are permanent jobs that are announced, it'll usually it won't even say like when you're supposed to start. We want you to start as soon as possible. A lot of our permanent jobs, when they're announced, hopefully that person's on board 3 or 4 months later, but that's right, because they have to pass a background, etc. Our seasonal gigs, they will tell you that this position is not expected to start until May. So yeah, you're like, for that job we were just looking at, the application's out now, which is kind of crazy, the announcement. But yeah, the seasonal jobs aren't going to start until then. And yeah, there are background investigations to do. Some jobs require drug testing, that type of thing. So it can be a bit, but I would expect a few months at least.
And I suspect, and you might be able to confirm this, Shannon, that it could also be that I wasn't in the first pool, the first round. Then the pool for those people didn't accept the job. So it might come back round to me even later.
So Joy's getting in the nitty-gritty a little bit, but essentially there's a group of applicants which is referred to as best qualified. And that's how you apply, how you answer that questionnaire. And if that list is exhausted, then the manager may say to HR, hey, I need more names. And then they would go down to the next group of applicants. And so then your application could be referred at that point. And so the manager may have to work through several groups. There's usually about 3 before they might actually exhaust everybody who applied to that position. So you're right. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to go up to just a couple more questions. I know we're running short on time, but I have a question. Are there any fully remote permanent jobs?
Yes, there are occasional permanent jobs. The National Park Service is actually rolling it back. So of course, during the pandemic, everybody was remote. The National Park Service is rolling them back. I actually looked today and there were 6 remote positions available on USA Jobs for the Park Service. There's a lot more in other agencies as well. So they're out there. They're just more few and far between. Our policy is definitely rolling it back some. But we do have a lot more flexible telework options, that type of thing. But most jobs are now located within a park.
Okay, and I'll do one more question. If you are employed by another federal agency like the Forest Service, is it any easier to work for the National Park Service?
Oh yeah, definitely. So it goes back to that area of consideration with those hiring paths. So if you're currently a permanent employee with Forest Service, if we announce a job that's open to current and former federal employees, well, then you can apply to it, but Joy can't because she's a U.S. citizen. Yeah. Now, if we open a job that's just open to National Park Service employees, the Federal Service or the Forest Service person can apply. But definitely that person will be eligible for a lot more jobs. And say you saw a job that was only open to the National Park Service, well, you know, if you're currently that grade, maybe you can lateral over, what we call. So anyway, if you're with the Forest Service and want a job at Blue Ridge, feel free to email me and see if you see a job that's open and maybe we could consider you. But yeah, it's definitely if your permanent status with, again, Social Security Administration, any other agency or bureau, it is easier to get back to where you want to be, like Blue Ridge or wherever else.
I also want to add that, just to reiterate, this workshop really was to help us get introduced to USA Jobs, and Shannon was teasing me for getting in the nitty gritty because I told her don't go in the nitty gritty.
Yeah, I was told not to.
Yeah, and so keep in mind there are a lot of other layers to application process, and that was also the key in what Shannon was saying, is that we'd like to be a resource for you, and that there are resources. Not only there's videos from other parks talking about application process. Office of Human Resources has monthly webinars as well. So there are multiple places. So take advantage of the internet as well as your resources that you're meeting today.
Yeah, agreed.
Well, thank you.
Well said.
You guys provided some really wonderful information. Hopefully we'll get people started and get people excited. There's so many wonderful and varied careers out there through the National Park Service. So thank you everyone for attending, and we hope to talk to you more soon. Look for future webinars. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Bye-bye,
Blue
y'all.
Ridge Parkway Foundation. We appreciate it.
Yes, we
Thank
are.
you.
So happy to be here. Have a good day, y'all. Bye.
You too.